Thank you all for being here. I just want to actually start this off by giving a thanks to the partners. I've seen a lot of companies hit growth curves like ours and many other industries that I've worked in, and a big part of that success is building a really strong partner network. I think it's a way to just amplify your message across a much wider market. So thank you for being here. My job, actually, before I introduce myself, I actually wanted to start this session with a little bit of a story. And the reason that is, and this applies to compete as well, the better you can tell a story, the further you're going to get in engagement compared to just, what we call feeds and speeds, right? Just being able to sit there and list, we have XYZ, they don't have XYZ. Sure, it matters if you get to the evaluation stage, but you have to get to that stage first. So we were having our sales kickoff recently, and we had a customer come speak at that. Huge customer, one of the largest in their space, and they've been using Kore for a few years. And the way that he described Kore, if there's anything you take from the session, I think this would actually be the key point, is he put it in an analogy that just clicks. So I've been at Kore for about 5.5 years over the last 10 years, come back and forth, worked mostly in conversational AI, but did some work in computer vision as well. So basically my whole career in AI and computer vision. And the way he described it is they're working with OpenAI. They have a very close relationship with them to work on GPT models and some other models and things like that. And the way he described it is with that vendor, GPT and whatever large language models he was talking about at the time is the brain of all of their AI operations. So they've got 20, 30, 40 different use cases they're working on. But Kore is the arms, legs, feet, body, everything you need to actually put that AI into practice. So to actually operationalize, what's going to allow you to take that brain and get things done in the real world? Because if you have just a brain, let's just imagine I'm up here and I'm just a brain, all I can do is think, right? And when you think about traditional use cases with LLM, now you have image generation and all that, but before that, purely text, right? You ask it a question, it may or may not have any context, depending on how you build your prompts, and that's it. You may get a hallucination, you may not, but it's not going to actually get things done, right? And so, if there's one thing I want you to take away from this session, one way I found that's really a great way to position Kore, it's that with Gale and these other things that you probably have learned about at this event, across many different use cases. If you want to operationalize your AI and put it into the real world, put it in front of customers, put it in front of agents, put it in front of employees, whoever, that's where this platform comes in, and that's what it enables you to do. It gives you that entry point to actually put out into the world. So that's just a little story. His analogy just really spoke to me. So I'll give you just a quick 5-second overview of myself, because you're not here for me, you're here for learning how to use competitive and what we can provide on the competitive front to win more deals for your own companies as well. So, like I said, I've been doing competitive intelligence for about 10, 11 years. A big chunk of that at Kore.ai. I started back near the beginning in 2014, 2015. Been back and forth a couple times now. This is actually my third time here. The space and the company has grown exponentially, and even in the feature set. So, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, we'd be talking just about conversational AI. Obviously, there's no generative AI piece, there's no search, which is now, growing exponentially. And so the competitive set has also grown exponentially. There's so much noise out there, but as you'll learn today, I think there's a couple unique ways that we can position our technology that'll help all of us win some more deals. So before we hop in too far, let me just give you a quick agenda. And one more point I want to make before we go too far is, because I get this question a lot, and we might have time, hopefully we'll have a little time at the end if you guys have any questions, but if you're ever looking for a framework of how aggressive you want to be in deals when it comes to speaking on the competition, whether you have specific competitors that you've been told about, or if it's just, you're up against one company or shortlisted against 3, what have you, couple rules of thumb that have worked really well for my career is, obviously, nothing personal. You never want to bring up instances where, they lost, Amazon Connect lost this deal because so-and-so was a bozo, right? Always take the high road there. It's not going to win you any favors. We don't want to play that kind of dirty. Try to keep private information out. I know we all hear things from customers, we hear things from partners. We get intel that's great, and that's good for training your own teams. But when we're having discussions with actual customers or prospects, it's best to use that for how you want to position, but not within the actual, don't go take what the analysts say and spit that out, for example. A lot of times that's private information, right? Or punching down is the other key one. So there's a way to do that, but it's not legitimately punching down. So if we're talking about a small player, and we run into a lot of point solutions, as you'll see, on like the EX side. Once we get into industries, you see a lot of, like Hyro on the healthcare side is just one example. The way to do that, don't go in and say, oh, they're terrible because they can only do X, Y, Z. Take a complementary approach. Hey, all you care about is automating SMS. Well, this one competitor, they're really great at voice. They score really high with the analysts. They're really good. But, if you're really looking to scale out, your SMS capabilities, you probably need X, Y, Z. And then, of course, what you say is X, Y, Z is what's most relevant, right? So just a few kind of key points I wanted to cover there. And apologies for having the notes on me. So as you guys probably are aware, I come from an analyst background more than anything else. So public speaking is not my day job. Okay, so today we're going to cover a couple things. I'm going to teach you how kind of best to position Kore against the wider market. I think there's a story there that's pretty compelling beyond that narrative I talked about. Then we're going to break it down into all of these different buckets. So automation, search, employee experience, what have you. And we'll talk about some of the differentiators within each of those spaces at a high level. And then as an example, I have one or two specific competitors in there that we can dive into, time allowing, to go into some more detail. Now, at the end of this, and we'll cover this a little more later, but I will be providing not only this deck, but a much more exhaustive deck. Going into this, I had something like, essentially all the competitors that you saw listed there are covered in kind of battle card level detail. So we'll provide all that after the session. So don't worry if the screen's kind of small, so you can't always see the text. And then another really important topic that we're going to discuss today, and we're going to use search as an example, is it's not directly related to compete, but that build versus buy. Our direct sales team gets asked that question all the time, especially with search. Why shouldn't we just try to build our own RAG system, right? And there is a really compelling narrative there, and I'm going to use search as an example, so when we get to that point, we're going to dive into that, and I'll kind of help you figure out how to position that answer. And one other thing you'll see is that a lot of these differentiators could apply across buckets. I didn't want to bore you by repeating the same information. Oh, this also applies to X, Y, Z. So I try to keep it original across each product line. All right, so let's start hopping in here. Oops. All right, so first I'm just going to give you a super quick little state of the market. You guys are all in this market, so I don't think we need to belabor this point too much. But as you know, there's tons of noise. There was already a ton of noise 5-6 years ago, to be frank, but now it's exponentially. But the noise, it isn't so much that, oh, there's a lot of chatbot building platforms, there's a lot of conversational AI. It's much wider than that. Once GPT really kind of hit the ground running, and someone used the example, maybe it was today with DK, of when his 70-year-old grandmother started talking about GPT. It's everywhere. So when that really hit, a lot of the companies and a lot of the competitors, they latched onto, let's go make an API call to OpenAI, and all of a sudden, we're an AI-enabled company, right? There's so much noise, and it's gotten to the point where you really have to go beyond that surface-level comparison, which I know is the bread and butter of a lot of competitive teams, because everyone starts saying the same thing. If you look at their marketing, if you look at even the demos, the pre-recorded demos, they say, oh yeah, we do this. We can handle all these intents. We use LLMs, X, Y, Z ways. So you really have to figure out and really connect that feature level with the business value. And that's really where Kore comes in. It's about scale and about actually being able to operationalize AI on an enterprise level. And that doesn't matter whether you're talking to an enterprise or a small business. The story there, even if you're talking to a small customer, is that you can leverage Kore for the future, for as you continue to scale and grow. So I won't belabor this point too much. Sorry. One of the points I wanted to make, actually, that I think is really, really important. because this will actually come into play with specific competitors. So when you're talking to, when you're talking about, Lex and Google Vertex AI and search and all of these, is that it's my understanding of LLMs at this point and OpenAI in general, but I'm sure some of the other model providers do this too. LLM prices and the price of those API calls, I believe, are artificially low at this point. A lot of these companies, they're running at a loss as far as what they're spending on compute versus what they're charging. And that's a growth lever, right? It's how can we corner, and you can only stop the growth of other commercial and open source models. I mean, it's just going to grow and grow. But it's a valid tactic, right? It's we come in cheap, we'll gobble as much of the market as we can, and then 5 years down the road, or X number of years down the road. So API calls are pretty cheap. And the reason this is important, and it'll come into play in just a minute here, is that a lot of these companies that are starting to just leverage APIs, calls as part of their Gen AI capabilities, they want to use LLMs for everything. They just want to go, okay, we'll pull this into every single workflow that we can, every single step in the flow that you're building. And that may have a low price now, but that's going to grow exponentially, if I understand the market correctly. So important part just to keep in mind, and that plays in a part, and we'll get into more detail, but that's because with Core, for example, you can be much more strategic about when you use an LLM. You want to use the LLM where it makes sense. You want to use a small language model or traditional NLU for the things that don't require it, because otherwise your spend is just going to get out of control. If you're a Google, if you're a Microsoft, maybe you don't care that much about how much you're spending. But for a lot of companies, that cost is going to have a big impact. So this slide I just put together some ideas for before you get to the point where you're really evaluating, which is the stuff we'll talk about. There's a couple things that I really like to throw out there. We won't go through again. I'll provide you all this simple. But when you're doing discovery, think about how you can sow doubt within that. And that's common tactic. But the way I like to think of it is, are you using only generative AI for your conversational piece? Are you trying to ignore the NLU portion, which again will come back, I believe, to bite you long term? Are you only making an API call? Can you actually use, and this is what the customer is using Core as basically that one platform to build all of your AI. That's your center of excellence. And I think once Gale comes out, it's going to be even more so, right? You can use that for all kinds of Gen AI applications and not just conversational AI. So those are the kind of questions before you even know who you're competing against are really good to start bringing up. Because then it makes you just start thinking, okay, well, can I really do that? Maybe it doesn't matter today, but is it going to matter to me in a year, right? Okay, so now I want to get into, and I better keep an eye on the time because I got lots of great stuff to go through today. So now I want to go through how, there's a couple ways that Core differentiates from the high level. So think about when you are early discussions, they want to know, okay, give me 2-3 sentences. They don't want to know they don't want to know like, okay, I'm going against yellow AI or what have you. They just want to know what makes you different, right? And there's a few ways here. When you look at traditional, so this is more of the traditional virtual assistant conversational AI space. And again, I'm sorry, the screen is a lot smaller than I anticipated. So, but I'll send this all over. So if you look at, the domain focus, so you look at a MoveWorks, a Vama, all those. What really holds them back and what gives us an advantage there is that we have that platform component. You can customize your pre-built solution, you can build new, you can extend. There's so much you can do there that doesn't rely on the vendor. It doesn't rely on managed services unless you want to work with them. With a lot of these, kind of point solutions, you're really tied to the hip, right? Because they don't have a platform. If you're talking about kind of the big name players, so your Googles, your Microsoft, and they're great for certain things, but a lot of times you need dedicated technical resources. You're going to need a team. Amelia is actually over on the platform side, but it's the same thing. From what we've heard and from customers and prospects that I've talked to, you need a team of 3 to 5, 7 sometimes to really just maintain that and be able to kind of build the infrastructure behind that. And then even on the platform side, as you'll see, they can't match the scale, and scale is going to be a big one. And scale is actually, it sounds counterintuitive, but when we talk about the hyperscalers in a minute, scale is actually really important because it's scale when it comes to conversational AI, which is something that Core actually leads in. And they don't have the match of technologies. They can't actually open the hood and show you. They have flashy marketing, sure, but we'll get into that. So actually, before I Yeah, here we go. All right, and a key point that I want to say before we continue is that another point that I think sets Kore apart is that we help future-proof you. All right, so we are, and we'll get into it, but we're model agnostic, NLU agnostic. We integrate with tons of different channels, languages, back-end systems. We know, and especially on the model side, we know progress it's going to continue, right? Every 6 months, there's going to be something new that's going to upend the industry. And so, yeah, we love if everyone purchases everything from us and you guys, but there are going to be other technologies that they're going to want to integrate into their tech stack when it comes to generative AI, conversational AI. So we want to build that platform that works well with all of these, so that way you have the vendor that they want to go to. Oh, well, we can do that with Kore, right? So yeah, we want to add, some sort of computer vision-based application. I'm just throwing a random example out. But we want to somehow connect that to, text. I don't know how you do that. I'm not an engineer myself, but let's just throw that example out. If we are extensible enough that theoretically, if that's a path we want to take, it's probably something we build in there. And so what really differentiates is that you have all of these use cases that can be tackled on a single platform. So we do the employee experience. You guys may or may not have heard, but I'm sure you'll hear at the event about Eva is a co-pilot-like experience that we're building. Agent experiences, search, CX is an obvious one, but we can do all of these different experiences on one platform. But what really I think sets us apart there is, and we'll get into that more, but is the fact that what makes Kore a really great platform for kind of a land and expand approach is that you don't have to go take the solution and then go try to find the problem that they have that'll match that, right? You can take the approach where you find what use cases and what problems they have first, and most likely there's a use case within there that we can tackle with one of the products, which is then part of the platform. So you can get in on that. Yes, it's great if we can land a deal with 10,000 agents right away and we're making millions, wonderful. But if it's a big company and a really important brand, we can get in on a smaller deal. Well, we're in their ecosystem, right? Then the next time they're thinking, oh, now we want to do something on the agent side. Well, Kore can handle it. You have had great experience with Kore. You've had great experience with yourselves, and let's talk. So I think it really uniquely sets that us apart there. And then this again, they're really small. Apologies, we'll send all these over. But then once you add in the Gen AI orchestration and functionality, and you can't see it on here, but we have all these different categories: autonomous agents, playgrounds, models, all sorts of things on there. Kore can slot into almost all of these, and same on the search side as well. So there's always going to be something that you can most likely sell to someone to get you that foot in the door, and then again, expand down the road as we go. So I think that's just a few things that make us unique, I think, from a high level. So now we're going to talk some specifics. All right. So the hyperscalers, you have your Googles, your Microsofts, Amazon, all these companies. And as I mentioned before, something that's really unique is you would think, okay, scale. Okay, these guys, on AWS, they handle millions and millions of customers. But what they don't do at the same level of scale is conversational AI. So Kore, we have one of the largest voice and one of the largest text deployments in the world. So we can actually tackle this at scale. And that's something, we have that ability and that advantage where we can say, well, when it comes to this specific application of technology, we can be trusted the most in that sense. So it's an interesting point. But something to be aware of before we get into specifics here is the cost of free, right? So a common tactic that I've heard of and that I've run into not just at Kore here with these hyperscalers is this concept of, oh, if you re-up your AWS contract with us, we'll give you Lex for free. Or a couple points there. And I think it's important to know kind of how to counter that. And one is, what's the cost of failure, right? Sorry. Oh, is there a question? I'm sorry.
Do you have some competitive information about IBM?
Not on this deck, but I do. I've worked with, well, not worked with them, but I've worked on them many times throughout the years. I just did a study a little while ago on Watson X, which is the, basically the current generation. And so I'm happy to get that all in the portal. I think I was talking to this gentleman at the beginning. I have a ton of resources that I plan to put on the portal, including IBM. I don't have anything prepared for this talk today on them, but if you talk to your partner success team, we'd be happy to get you that. But like I said, I want to get this all on the partner portal. I'm a big proponent of whatever we arm our sales team with, our partner should have, as far as that kind of information, because it's a win-win, right? The more you win, the more we win, and vice versa. So sorry, but not in this specific meeting. But I think how we counter that, and this is just a small little aside, is that, okay, they'll offer this for free, but what happens if, and which happens frequently, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, you still haven't gone live with the project, which has happened on more than one occasion, right? Or they offer it for free. Well, now, like for using the Amazon example, well, now you have to start using Bedrock, you have to start using Kendra, you have to start using IAM, you just have to start integrating all this to get the same level of functionality, and then they see 6 months in, oh, you have this massive volume, time to start making some money off this, right? There's a cost of free. And not only that, when you look at the hyperscaler specifically, and I will speed things up because I know we got a lot to cover today, specifically, a lot of times they charge separately for LLMs and Gen AI functionality. And so it looks great. Like if you look at Lex pricing, you look at their chat and their voice just on a normal chat request, pretty competitive. It's not that much. If you run cost models, it's like, wow, how do they get it so cheap? Well, because it doesn't include the cost of all of the other AWS technologies you're going to have to use. And with Google, it's the same thing at their text and chat. Well, if you start using Vertex AI search and conversation, which is any sort of Gen AI functionality, every time you make an API call or an API request, it's like 3 times the price. I don't remember the price exactly off my head, but it adds up quickly. And so they get you in the door with that, oh, well, we'll do free, and oh, it's, it'll be X, Y, Z. But then once you start really rolling in the good stuff, the LLMs, it adds up quick. And I think that's something else. We won't go through point by point. Like I said, I'll provide all this information to you. But I think really what makes us unique is that, one, we use the LLMs and SLMs. We don't want to lock you in. The Google, AWS, it's called the quicksand for a reason. They really want to keep you in that ecosystem. They have a product for everything, so go use this. Why do you need to look elsewhere? Well, we're LLM and SLM agnostic. You can use almost any commercial or open source model. You can eventually, with Gale, build and fine-tune your own. And we also know that we don't want you, because it would end up being a poor experience, and because we don't charge differently as far as I'm understanding, we don't want you to use LLMs for everything, right? We want to create the best experience possible because we want to keep your business long-term, right? I mean, it's one thing to win a great deal. It's another than if you lose them 6 months later, right? So let me see here. So I mentioned the product dependency. I think that's really a big thing, but then also the speed of development, right? So you would think, okay, Google's, Amazon, they have thousands of engineers. They're going to produce things so fast. Well, this space is not their focus. Dialogflow and now Vertex AI and search, it's a very small piece of their puzzle, right? Amazon specifically, they released V2 about a year and a half ago, and the pace of development after that, it's been, I think, 6 months between any significant updates. There's smaller things than that, of course, but it's not the focus, right? And I think that's also what makes Kore kind of unique against it. This is what we do. This is our bread and butter. If you care about conversational AI and Gen AI and that combination and search and what that'll do, that's where to go. Sorry, let me keep an eye on the time to get you guys through all this. All right, so I'll look at 1 or 2 quick examples. Again, thought we'd be on the big screen. So don't worry if you can't read it. I'll send this all along. This is a really, really light version of what I produce and what I hope to share with all of the partners. So I produce external handouts that we'll give to select customers. That'll be, we don't keep them too long because we don't want to focus solely on that seeds and feeds. but it'll have breakdowns at a higher level, those feature by feature. It'll kind of talk about that nuance, and that nuance is important, right? And that's why I don't I didn't want to come up here and say, okay, we'll have a chart of 20 things that we do better than, or we say we do better than Microsoft Copilot, Copilot Studio. And the reason for that is there's nuance. So Amazon Lex, I love using them as an example, not to beat up on them. I'm sure they're great. I'm sure they have great people. But if you look at the analyst reports they say they have great NLU, fantastic, on paper, right? But then you talk to customers, and you go through their use case and what intents were covered in this use case, and it's a different story, right? So you can't just look always on a one-to-one basis. But Copilot Studio is a really, really interesting case. And the way I've designed these and what I want to provide to you is kind of a choose-your-own-adventure in that there's no, in traditional competitive intelligence, you put a standard sheet and throw it at them, okay, this is all why we're different. But 75% of that they're not going to care about. There's specific problems that they want to solve. They care about the features that matter to them. If they're just going off and just want to do text and automate text, they don't care about voice. So having half a page or pages of documentation about how your voice is superior, it's not going to get you far, right? So I like to kind of provide a lot of different avenues for you to build narratives off of. So like with Copilot Studio is pretty interesting because Gen AI is another thing. It costs separate. It's a multiplying factor. And they're a little unclear as far as what that multiplying factor actually is. And it's still, it's just like with Amazon, it's a little rushed to market. And again, not to speak ill, but a lot of customers reported, there's inconsistencies in billing. There's, it's a little bit kind of new to the market, trying to get ahead of that kind of that Copilot trend that everyone is on at this point. And just like with Amazon, you really have to start using multiple services. So you have to use Power Apps or Power Automate for a lot of that kind of that task automation portion. And all of those have runtime dependencies that can affect performance or billing. You also, there's also, usage issues. It's not a pure pay by session. It might be, hey, you've used, you went under, and as far as I understand pricing, not to belabor that, but the reason that I want to bring up a few, and we'll skip past them in just a minute, and where the nuance matters in the discussion, what I want to arm you guys with, because I see this session as just like step one. I really want to empower the partner team. And the nuance matters because if you go through some of their partner materials and you see, for example, okay, yes, you can, like anyone else, they have agent escalation, they have multilingual services, but when you get into the details, like a multilingual I'll use as an example, it's pretty complicated at this point in time. I'm sure they're going to fix these things. I'm sure they're going to streamline, once they've been in market longer. But, for a bot, or for a Copilot, you either have to have a different Copilot for every language, or you have to build the translations into the actual configuration. So every time you want to add something or update it, you have to update the configuration, or you have to sync with a live translation service, which then introduces issues with latency, runtime dependencies, and same with the I lost my train of thought, but anyways, so I think you see the point. There's nuance there, and there's avenues to win. So even sometimes when it appears like, okay, on paper, we both offer this, there are avenues to win. And being able to speak to that, I think, can win you a lot of goodwill. So I want to provide these type of materials. I'll give you one more example. Again, not to beat up on Amazon. I do have some friends who work there. I love them. But again, you start to require multiple services. On the NLU side, you have to basically use what's in Bedrock, as far as I understand, for the Lex component. And on the NLU side, for example, you have to use, they're essentially built off Amazon Alexa, which again, you would think, and I'm sure in a lot of general CX use cases is great, but once you start getting into things on the financial services side, once you get into things on healthcare and all these, there's a performance. And so if there's anything I take away from this, and actually it's something I was going to say at the conclusion, but I think it's pretty important to mention here, is that one way Kore can help you win is we are more than willing against all these companies to show live demos and open up our platform and actually show it. A lot of the competitors will see that, especially once we get in the conversation on the AI side with OneReach and Yellow and some of these. Great marketing. If you go look at their websites, oh yeah, we do everything that Kore does. We do this, that. But they probably won't sit down and show you a live demo, at least from what I've heard from customers. And so, all right, so we got, okay, sorry, belaboring that point too much. So on the CX automation side, so like I mentioned, the flashy side, so I think really what sets us apart is that we use LLMs in a really smart way. So we use both large language models, small language models, but we use them both at design time and runtime. There's a couple of different things you can do there. So we integrate LLMs into the conversational design process, so you can use it as, I'm going to butcher the term, but I'm going to say as a co-pilot as you're building your bot. You can use it. You can use it at runtime for prompt for response rephrasing, things of that nature. A lot of them offer some form of this, but it's going to be pretty limited. And we'll get into that more. And then there's that cost control part that I said. A lot of them, they just want to start using LLMs for everything that they can get away with using it. But what really sets us apart, I think, that doesn't get talked enough about is that monitoring and guardrail side, right? So the more you use LLMs, the more potential risks that you introduce to your enterprise. For one, in certain cases, you're locked into using OpenAI, and unless you have a strong enough vendor relationship with them, you're probably not going to get a private instance of their models, which means if you were to go try to fine-tune it, your models are going to wind up on their servers, or your data will wind up on their servers. So there's some weaknesses there. We provide a whole kind of system of guardrails that I'm sure you guys have heard about in other sessions, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not an engineer, so I won't try to get into all of the details there. So let's look at a really quick example here. So on the yellow AI side, so sorry. Okay. So on the yellow AI side, for example, like I mentioned, not NLU model agnostic, but what's really important there is that with Core, if you love the Lex model you've been building, if you love what you've done in Dialogflow, you can reuse that, right? We're not saying, it's not a complete rip and replace. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to say, well, I have to completely get them out of there to get my foot in the door. You can use our NLU essentially as a backup. So when your Dialogflow instance fails, you can call our NLU as essentially that next step in the process. And same with the bots, right? So if you build bots you love, there is some technical part that you'll have to probably work with us on, but there are ways that we can orchestrate with these bots that have already been built. So you can maintain that ecosystem that you've been started building, and then maybe you want to build some with search integrated, or with XYZ. So that is I think a pretty key value differentiator there. Like I said, you'll get all of this, but you'll get much deeper information the more I can build it out. So like on the analyst side, for example, Core has recently, in the last year, we've been named a leader or a major player in like 12 different reports. So if you're talking to someone who pretty big on those reports, really trust those, well, we can provide a matrix of, across those 12, where did they land in relationship to, say, Yellow, or Microsoft Copilot, who isn't listed. Is there a question? I'm sorry. Oh, okay. All right, let's see. On the Amelia side, I talked about a little bit earlier, but what really sets us apart is that we're going for that no code, that low code kind of that approach, in that you don't have to. If you have a large technical team, great, you can get even more out of the platform, but it's not necessary, right? With competitors like Amelia, no matter what they claim, you're going to need certain types of experts on your team to really get the most out of the technology, right? And then there's other costs that go beyond Amelia, but there's the personnel costs that are associated that usually when you're looking at and doing like a pricing comparison, it's not always simple to just say, okay, let's just look at Core's platform pricing or session pricing versus Amelia's, right? There are those kind of human factors that I think, to really make a fair comparison, make sure you kind of take that into account. And we can help with that. Like I said, we don't have enough time to dive deep in all these as much as I would love to talk in depth about each and every one of these. All right, so let's look at the CCAS space. What time does the session go? Is it 4:05? Oh, okay. All right. Want to get through as much stuff as I can to hopefully help you guys out. Well, I'll continue while he looks. So I think really, CCaaS is an interesting space. If you asked me even just 2 or 3 years ago what I thought about our position in the market when it comes to the traditional CCaaS players, Genesys, NICE, all of those, if I was being honest, have a very different answer, right? So we have built out our capabilities quite a lot to the point where I'd say we're pretty comparable to a talk desk or one of those. I would not suggest going to like a Genesys and say, well, Kore is a better CCaaS than Genesys. Oh, 12 minutes? Okay, I will get through it. But so there are some, and we're happy to run kind of better together campaigns as well. But there are some competitors like a Genesys and all that where sometimes the best approach is not let's do a head-to-head with Kore, right? Because Genesys has been around forever. They have a very, very mature platform. They have a massive customer base. Probably not going to win too many of those fights unless they've just had really, really poor experiences. But where our CCaaS really comes out is our AI. You can add AI to a traditional contact center stack. It can supplement what's available on Genesys, what's available on NIC, all of these. But what our focus really is on that automation piece, right? So a lot of traditional competitors in this space, even though they're adding AI, they're adding all this, it's very surface level, right? And we'll get to that on the agent assistant, but a lot of agent assistant AI and what they're calling AI now is just more variations of here's some great recommendations for what to say next, or okay, here's a predefined list of next best actions, right? But there's no actionable piece to that, So that is, I think, so really what I would say on the CCaaS is, and I think this is a story we all need to kind of develop together, is against certain competitors like slightly small, like TalkDesk, even Amazon, I'd be happy to go head-to-head with them on their CCaaS solutions. On other ones, it might be better to take a more collaborative approach. Let's see how and you'll see that on the EX side as well, like with companies like ServiceNow. How can we boost your ServiceNow deployment, right? Versus how would we reduce, get rid of them? So we're getting a little low on time, so I'll skip past. I picked Amazon again here. Again, not to pick on my good friends over there. Hopefully no one here is from Amazon or good friends with Amazon, but not to pick on them. They're great. But there's so much you kind of have to build into, and so many dependencies. Like with call deflection, they've worked on it a bit, but you got to add Amazon SNS. There's some Lambda. They're getting better about dependency on Lambda. It used to be a year or two ago you had to use Lambda for everything if you really wanted to automate workflows, things of that nature. So we'll kind of skip through this because there's some important parts I want to make, but I will provide all this to you guys, I promise. All right, agent experience, like I said, I think really where we stand out against like a Verint, a Cresta, all these it's that automated assistance, right? So that bot that you build for an agent, if you're using the XO platform, can be used for your customers too. And I think maybe you probably heard this in some of the talks we've had, but that same level, so once you start building and determine, oh yeah, we want a customer to be able to automate, X, Y, Z, well, if that's a workflow that the agent could do while on a call, that's something that you can work in, right? But it's that automation piece I think is really important. But because we integrate with a really wide range of agent desktops, there's that add-on story too, right? So you don't have to use our desktop. We do have an agent desktop that you can use, but you can still use it with your Genesys deployment. You can use it with your TalkDesk and some others as well. And there's an adherence part. We can use AI to help your agents, better adhere to playbooks and guided recommendations, things of that nature. So let's see. And then I had put together some more information on Verint, for example. Verint's an interesting example that I was studying just a month or two ago. The major point I'd put there, besides some potential varying issues with pricing and things like that, they get a little bit complicated, is that like a lot of the other players, like the hyperscalers, are really trying to lock you in, right? So right now, their AI innovation, which is all of that bot piece, all of that agent assistance, you have to be a cloud customer, which can also be deployed on-premise and all that, but you have to be part of that to even get access to the bots, right? So you can use their workforce management and these other tools if you're a Genesys customer and all that, but they're trying to pull and trying to get as much money through their cloud by using AI as kind of a lever there. So running out of time here, but employee experience. So we've got some stuff that I put together here for the solutions, but really what I want to talk about is not our pre-built solutions. I actually want to talk about Eva a bit, because I think there's a wave coming with copilots. Everyone's releasing copilots. ServiceNow, Microsoft has copilots across 365 and all that. Salesforce, Einstein, Gemini, all those. But there's a couple things, and I think it'll be important because as we start to release marketing about this, I think we want to start generating these kind of conversations. So there's 4 things really, and I don't have a slide for this, but happy to share all this. So there's really 4 things I think that set us apart there. There's the context sharing piece, which is that copilots, they're mostly limited to those productivity tools, right? You can't take what you're working on in 365 or whichever Microsoft product I'm thinking of. You can't share that with other systems, right? It doesn't follow you. So Eva will handle all of that orchestration for you. With traditional like exo builders, so like Workday, MoveDay, things like that, there's customization. That does play with our our pre-built solutions as well. We have that platform that you can continue to extend and build upon what you implement. So let's say you get a rapid implementation in place, six weeks, what have you. You get a bot out there for IT, whatever. Well, they can continue if they're inclined to extend that and build upon that using the XO platform. You have some no-code builders like LangChain, GPT, Enterprise GPT, all of that. But again, heavy coding, right? A lot of these competitors, even some that claim to be low code, when you get down to the actual integration frameworks, it's not so simple, right? And we're trying to make that as simple as possible. We're trying to democratize and make as many companies able to adopt conversational AI. And I'm coming down to 5 minutes, so I will get through this one more section after this, and then maybe we can take a question or two. And then on the enterprise search side, you have your Covios, Gleans, who I actually will cover during the search portion. But the issue is, they're great in some ways for building RAG systems from your structured, unstructured data sources, but connecting that to a conversational experience is really where they start to struggle a bit. Getting that front end. So yeah, you can build a great RAG system, but how are you going to actually give it to customers? How are you going to give it to employees? That becomes a bit of an issue. Okay, so like I said, I'll send all this over. Search is really interesting. We're getting, and I'm sure you guys will see this on the partner side, we're getting tons and tons of interest in search, one of our fastest growing products at this point. And I'll provide this to you, and you can see some of the stuff that's really interesting, our caching, so you don't have to make an LLM call every single time. You can, the first time you do it, you can cache that, so that way you're not making an API call to reduce your cost long term and it'll reduce latency. There's a human in the loop part that we haven't productionized yet, but we can do it. We've been proven with a customer that we could do this, and I think it's really, really going to be powerful on the enterprise side. If you want to have a human approve any of the answers that you get through chunking and these other methods, you can have a human sit that has to thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever system you want to use, and approve that answer before it ever reaches your employees or customer base. So you can build that really secure kind of loop where you're not just letting AI run wild, not that you would. So that can be done, and I think that's pretty important there. But the thing I want to give you real fast is really that build versus buy, because that is a question we're getting a ton. And the answer I'd give to you, there's a few things. The first is that building's not really optimized to scale and to be flexible, right? You could do it, certainly, if you have 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months to kill, you got a tech team, and you want to build a product for yourself. But it's also going to be very pro-code, right? So there's no way you're going to build a tool for yourself without that. Then you got to source all these different products. You got data transformation for the chunking, vector databases, embedding models, all of that. It just keeps growing the list of everything that you're going to have to integrate and maintain, just as you would for any product you build yourself. Buy allows you to start small, expand. There's built-in guardrails, scanners, data security, all of the stuff that needs to be designed and built. Yes, I am right at the end, I promise. And buy allows for easier automation, reporting, all of that. So I've been told I have 1 minute. So let me go ahead and just say one more thing real fast. So as you know, I'm running Compete now. I actually haven't been back at the company very long, about 2-3 months at this point. I have ambitious plans, and I want to provide the partner teams with the same level of resources that we give to our own sales team. I really want to leverage you guys. So there's a ton of more resources and training. I think on the internal side, we've already built 20 plus various forms of handouts, battle cards, things of that nature. I have way more planned. I'm building out some research pods so I can do more than just my own research. And we want to help you tell those human stories, right? Because Core can be leveraged in a lot of different ways across the company. And I think if you can get to the human stories, of course, we'll have to anonymize things like that, but if you can tell personal stories of, well, this person did go with Connect initially or go with Lex initially, but this was the experience they actually had in 6 months. It's very different from what they'll see on paper if they look at the flashy demo videos. So hopefully you guys learned a little something today. I had way more material than I could. I actually, like I told some of you before, I had a deck that was probably twice that size. Happy to provide that full deck to give you some more deep insight, but yes?
I was just going to ask John if we could get the either deck or piece.
Yes, certainly. Yes, that is actually, I'll be working with the partner team. I just got the go-ahead today. That was part of a larger question, what we want to share and all that. And I am all for enabling y'all because the way this market is moving doesn't matter. Yes, a competitor will eventually hear how we're positioning ourselves in XYZ. Well, in 6 months, 12 months, the market's going to be completely different. Our competitive messaging, our positioning is going to constantly evolve. So I'm not the type that really fears. We're not going to be giving out, proprietary information anyways. I'm not a tech guy. I know tech, but I'm not an engineer, so I won't be giving code or anything like that. But I'm all for adding all those resources. So it might take a little process of getting them up. We'll certainly share the full deck, about 48 slides. I think there's 3 or 4 competitors for each section that I dive into more, and a bunch of other resources. So as fast as I can get them up there, they'll be there for y'all. So yes.
We've got a lot of case studies that we use externally, and we don't, on those external case studies, oftentimes talk about we can be in
Yes.
a place. We oftentimes might share that more internally.
Yes.
That would be something to look at partnerizing.
Yes.
So that they can see real world examples of where we these competitors outside.
Yes, actually, I had a conversation with a couple of team members yesterday about getting access to them, maybe myself even talking to some of these customers, because those human stories, I think, will go so much further than those feeds and speeds, whatever the catchy name for it is, of doing those comparisons. I mean, those comparisons, they have a place. If you get to the evaluation stage, certainly, but you got to get there first, right? It doesn't matter if you can't get to that final stage. So certainly, it's part of the plan. It's just a matter of me collecting it all and figuring out how to democratize it. But I know we're technically over, but does anyone else have any other questions? Happy to answer.
Maybe
Yes?
Sean, so I'm assuming you've done the homework and the ones you have battle cards for, Core considers top competitors.
Like anything else, it's an ongoing changing list, right? So if they're on this list, and again, it'll be in the full deck, they're pretty high competitors, definitely. But if you start looking at the hyperscalers and the traditional conversational AI space, that list is, you can't just say there's 3 or 4, right? We got 10, 15, and I'm in the process of researching all of them, getting refreshed. Like I said, I've been working on computer vision for a few years. But we will I want to tackle them all. So here at Core, we're a big proponent that, especially in this space, competitive intelligence can really move the needle. And so I'm building a research function up to help me kind of expand how much I can cover. So for areas like that with a lot of competitors, we plan to, we don't want to just provide 2, 3 battle cards or something high level. Here's how you do it against all the competition. We do want to get into that a little more granular across. So hopefully that answers your question. But I know we're out of time, but if, I'll be here today. I'll be around for the rest of this week. Feel free to come. I'm happy to chat. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you so much. So.